Within a year of moving to the United States, Johann Hoch had already married and murdered 2 different women in 2 different states. But the next he tried to swindle would be trying to swindle him, and may have been a murderer herself. I couldn't wait to do this episode. This is Tomb Snoopers. I am so excited to do this particular episode. There's one person in particular that in the new Johann Hoch book that I did, there wasn't nearly enough time to go into her story.
Okay.
This was, we got to go into, he had just moved to Chicago. He had already married and murdered a woman over the course of, they were married for about 6 months. So they married in, I think, 3 or 4 months anyway. They married in late summer. She died December of 1895, so it couldn't have been that long. But the very next month, he was already looking for another wife, and happened to apparently meet a guy named Gustav Strillo.
Okay.
Who seemed to have been a shady character who ran an employment agency that was really more of a matrimonial agency. And
it is a job.
Eventually was personally connected to a couple of different murders around town. Seems to have definitely been a shady character. But we're talking about matrimonial agencies here. In any given transaction where a matrimonial agency arranged for a husband to marry a new wife, either the husband, the wife, or the matrimonial agency was probably not on the level. In any given transaction, one of them was probably trying to swindle somebody. And it only stands to reason that sometimes more than one of the people involved would have been operating not entirely on the level. So this, everybody, is Tomb Snoopers. I'm Adam Selzer.
I'm Patty Vasquez.
I have been a historian in Chicago for over 20 years now, a historian and tour guide, author of several books, and I met Patty when I became a regular guest on her radio show on WGN a little over 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
It's wild to think of, isn't it?
I know, time flies.
So, yeah, so we got to talking between segments at the time and just really hit it off.
Yeah.
And we talked about like connections to old Chicago crimes and stuff. I mentioned to her that I didn't really do modern stuff very much.
Right.
There's a too soon aspect.
Which I appreciate, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is I was thinking in the last episode that, I'm like laughing when we know someone's possibly the next victim, and it probably seems a little bit macabre to people.
Yeah.
But I mean, our stories become in generations and even in present times.
Right.
Others to devour.
Well, it's part of how we deal with death.
It's definitely how I deal with death.
Yeah, when you laugh at it, it loses some of its power over you.
Correct.
And it's not that it doesn't have enough power over you in the end, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's part of how we deal with this. And I'm not necessarily as comfortable doing it with more modern cases. Mm-hmm. And what I do find usually is I tend to stick with stories where there's not any direct involvement still around.
Exactly, yeah.
And that doesn't mean that there isn't. Like, I got a very nasty letter one time from the descendant of an H.H. Holmes victim. He had seen some show. I'm not even sure what show it was myself. Right. I would have done like 3 hours of talking headshots, and they picked 2 minutes tops of what it was. And I guess I came off as kind of flippant in it, which can happen. But he really wanted all of the urban legends to be true was part of it. It was like, that man killed...
That went a different direction.
That man killed my ancestors in an oven. I was like, no, that wouldn't have been an oven.
Yeah.
And then he said something about I was too dismissive of the wonderful work of the Chicago police, which that's frankly a red flag.
Yeah.
We're talking about the 1890s Chicago police in that case.
But you have enough information to back it up.
Yeah, I mean, I will show you all of my sources on this stuff.
Yep.
And I try to dig into as much as I can. But really, I got my start in this stuff when I was working for a ghost tour company about 20 years ago. I got a job with them just through Craigslist, and I was a young adult novelist by day at the time, and everybody else who applied was an actor.
Okay.
So they seemed to like me. They taught me what stories to tell people, and I was a little nervous because smartphones were just on the cusp of coming out at the time. But like people could fact check me,
right?
And it's one
thing. Did you ever
thing.
Get fact checked?
No, it never actually happened. Not that I know of, but People could. I mean, with any ghost story, there's a history story, and then there's the ghost sightings associated with that history story. And if the ghost sightings are being exaggerated, or if you can't find an actual source on this, it happens. Like, trying to find the first-hand account of a ghost sighting is notoriously difficult.
Understandable.
Yeah, I mean, like, here in Chicago, we've got nearby the Biograph Theater, is the alley where John Dillinger was shot. You can find all these articles saying literally hundreds of people have seen the ghost of Dillinger. Like, name one of these people,
I know.
please.
And I've lived here my whole life. I wish.
Yeah, I never actually run across these people.
I'll take Johnny Depp in absence of that.
Oh, yeah, sure. You know, I remember when they were filming the movie Public Enemies with Johnny Depp, they redid that whole block
Yeah,
to look
it was
like
amazing.
it was 1934. It was terrific to just walk around. I like walking around that block better than I liked the movie. Really.
Agreed.
So, where was I?
Oh, we were about to get to you're excited to tell this story about.
Yeah, we were excited to tell. But this one is far enough back that the whole story kind of becomes a comedy of errors too. And in this case, he met this guy Gustav Strillo, who said, "Yeah, I know people you can marry. Let me hook you up with this person." Hooked him up with a woman named Minnie Warnecke. Possibly,
Really, this is one of the best names ever.
Yeah, and I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's never spelled the same way twice, for one thing. I think Warnecke sounds like a name that I have heard.
Sure.
But also, she went by several different names because she herself also had several different husbands alive at that time.
Oh.
So she was also married to several different people. But the two of them got married. Her version of the story later on was that, no, I didn't marry him. I just met him, and I was thinking of marrying him. But then he pointed a gun at me and said, you must now give me all of your money from your savings. Not realizing that she had said she had already seen the gun and taken the bullets out.
Okay.
But she knew she wasn't safe around him, so when he pointed the gun at her and said, now you must give me your savings, she said, all right, I'll just go to the bank, and then ran away.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, be right back. Yeah, this is how she told the story later, and eventually she admitted that, yes, she had married this Johann Hoch character. And the story doesn't sound exactly right to me. There's no other case I know of where Hoch was actually pointing guns at people. I mean, he did have a pistol, but normally he would just try to charm people into giving them all of the money. And when he wasn't successful, there were times when he wasn't successful and he never pointed the gun at anybody else. He would usually just cut his losses and leave. Mm-hmm. But this is the way that she herself told the story later on. I think the most likely scenario is he married her thinking he was going to get all of her money. She married him thinking she was going to get all of his money. And after a couple of days, they realized they had made the mistake. And later on, when she passed away, newspaper reporters remembered that at the inquest they had a fine time calling each other Bluebeards.
Okay.
But Minnie is one of the weirder characters in this, and she's very difficult to research because she went by so many different names. I was able to find some marriage records of her, like under the name Ernestine Abraham. And the one she was mostly known for at the time that she married Johann Hoch was Ernestine Domke. She was living with a guy named Herman Domke that was her husband. And about a year after this quick marriage to Johann Hoch, Herman Domke walked into the police station and said, I want to turn my wife in.
Oh.
You remember 5 years ago was the murder of Mr. Kenneth down in Melrose Park? She did that. Now, I had to go back for this one, of course. This was a big story in 1892. A few months after the original Johann Hoch of Wheeling, West Virginia died, there was down in Melrose Park, there was an old man named Mr. Kenneth. And again, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. Mm-hmm. Even if I knew how people pronounce that now, it doesn't mean it's how he pronounced it himself.
Correct.
And so one day he was just found dead. He was sitting in his room in Melrose Park. They found his body with blood staining his white beard. Somebody had hit him across the head with a fireplace poker. And then somebody else, or possibly the same person, had stabbed him brutally through the temple with a corn knife.
Whoa.
And there wasn't really any known motive for this. They presumed it must have been some kind of burglary or something, and people got away with a small amount of money. Uh-huh. But there was never any clue. They decided it must have been some tramps who broke in. And the story just kind of faded away. But this woman, Ernestine Domke, had been working as a housekeeper in the house next door.
Ah.
And Herman's story was the night of that murder, she came in covered with blood and muttering something about how all that for only $150. And they were newlyweds at the time. But by the time the story came out in 1897, for one thing, Herman had found out that she had married lots of other people. And for another, they were now undergoing a divorce that was pretty acrimonious. And I was able, at the legal archives in Chicago, they've got all of the divorce files, all of the divorce paperwork and records, and that can be a really interesting source of data, but it's always kind of hard to know just what to believe in it. Because in those days, they didn't have no-fault divorce. You had to convince the judge that you had a really good reason to get a divorce, not just that you wanted one.
Really?
And so almost all of them that I ever read, it's, people got divorced a lot more than people think. People act
I've wondered about that.
Yeah, people act like it was impossible for women to get a divorce. It wasn't impossible. You could do it. A lot of people would even agree. Go ahead and tell the judge whatever you want about me, whatever will get him to grant the divorce.
Sure.
And so in this case, she had a lot of stories about how he had beaten her and choked her and threatened to kill her all in front of the neighbors, and maybe it was true. He himself also had stories that she has tried to kill me many times. There was even a story that she left the gas on and poisoned the children who lived upstairs, which I couldn't find anything to back that part up. But so she was brought in for murder in 1897, a year after she had married Johann Hoch, and held in jail for a couple of weeks. A lawyer came in. She was suffering from illness, so they were able to delay the trial a while. And they brought in her son, Robert Renke, her son from her first marriage, who agreed to testify against her. And he said, just a few weeks ago, she told me she tried to convince me to take her husband out on a boat and drown him. And
Whoa.
So whether or not she was just joking or what, at the time he thought she was just kidding, but now he's like, maybe not.
Hey.
So it's hard to know. I have no opinion as to whether she might have been responsible for this murder. I suspect it was probably just part of an acrimonious divorce. He was probably just trying to pin something on her. But you never know. This was a woman who was married to several people at the same time without troubling to get a divorce.
I always say that sounds like so much work to be married to several people.
It really does.
Right. I mean, we're not talking about being able to drive from house to house or I'm staying over at a friend's house. What are we doing?
Right. Well, I know plenty of people in the poly community and stuff.
Sure.
It all sounds like a lot of paperwork to me.
I was just going to say, but back then, back
back
you
then.
You get in a carriage, you hopping on a horse, what are we doing?
Oh, yeah, so she was married something they estimated maybe 7 times that they knew of, and without getting divorces very often or with anybody dying. So she herself was definitely a bigamist. That's why when they first approached her about the Johann Hoch thing years later, she said, I didn't marry him. I knew him, but I didn't marry him because she was
I didn't do it.
She was about to step in any number of things herself. So she was eventually dismissed for lack of evidence in that 1892 murder case. She had been in jail for a couple of weeks waiting for her own son to come testify against her. And this is something I need to get, is the divorce file from when she was married to Robert's father. So I never looked that one up, but he said they divorced when I was 13, and after that I was just left to shift for myself. I've been on my own since I was 13, and wow, that really broke up the home, I guess.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's more to that story there. His name was Robert Renke. Minnie would usually be called Minnie Rankin in the press, or Mary Rankin, because everybody was Mary in these stories.
Sure.
And so just such a wild backstory with her, and I know that there's more stuff out there about her that I haven't found, and possibly some more records, just because she changes her name every time you turn around. And so I'm almost amazed that this didn't happen more often, that Hoch met somebody who was really trying to swindle him.
Really? Yeah.
And the data on it is fairly short. We don't really know what that 4-day marriage was like, but they were only married for a couple of days before just parting and going their separate ways. But this was all just within about a month after Julia Steinbrecher, his previous wife, had died. So he got right back out there immediately.
And this was the matrimonial agency.
Yeah, this was all through a matrimonial agency, possibly Gustav Strelo's agency, which was officially an employment agency, but I think he was probably making more money turning it into a matrimonial agency while he was at it. Mm-hmm. And eventually, when the police brought in Minnie during the big Hoch sensation about a decade later, and she kept on saying, "No, I might have met him, but," and they said, "Well, here we've got this letter right here that says it was you by this guy Gustav Swindler." She said, "Let me see that," and started ripping it up. But then they brought,
paperwork.
But then they opened the door and Gustav walked right in, along with the Justice of the Peace, who had married them, and had also married Hoch at his previous. It was a guy named Morris, who actually took out ads in magazines as a Justice of the Peace who will perform your marriage ceremony. And Hoch used him enough that you wonder why the guy didn't get more suspicious.
Unless he was getting a cut of the
he was. I'm sure making some money off each transaction, so he wasn't inclined to ask too many questions.
Why would you want to cut somebody else in when you just get like a different?
Yeah, he probably just paid him the regular fee. Honestly,
right.
It was just work for him.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it would seem to like if you would be more a little smarter to go to different.
Yeah, there were other people that he took clear to Milwaukee to marry. That
I was
going to say, okay. And I'd have to kind of look into how the laws were different, because I do see a lot of people in Chicago who went to Milwaukee to get married back then.
I wonder how you talk a woman into that. Oh, it's so romantic in Milwaukee. I have to take you to. I mean, I love Milwaukee.
Oh yeah, we love Milwaukee. We're up in Wisconsin all the time.
Yes, I just think it's funny.
And he took Emily, his last wife, to Joliet. Or one of them he took to Hammond, Indiana.
Oh dear.
But he did mix it up some. Of these two were the same person right in a row. But just a couple of months later, there's a Jacob Schmidt wedding record from the next month that I'm not sure is him. I don't think it is. It's kind of the trouble. Jacob Schmidt, the name that he used, born with and used off and on, it's such a common name. So it's very difficult when I find a record like that to say that it's really him. Except with all the various names he used, from state to state, there's different paperwork for the wedding. Sometimes it'll have a slot for parents' names. And usually, when Hoch was getting married again, when he got to that slot, he would give his parents actual names. So that's kind of a tell. If there's something where I suspect this is probably him, if it lists the parents' names, like it'll be Mother Elizabeth Weber.
Right. For some reason, he was always.
If I got reason to suspect it's him and the mother is Elizabeth Weber, that's got to be him.
Funny that
it's a tell. He hadn't thought up a good enough lie at the time.
Right.
And frankly, he was not that good of a liar. I mean, he could keep things going for a while with his personas that he created, but he would usually slip up sooner or later.
Well, it's interesting going back to, I think you said earlier that he hated women, right? Was part of it?
He must have.
He just thought they were disposable. When
he was working as a bartender, he told his clients that women should be classed as domestic animals.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
But that was the persona he had as the bartender. The next persona he had, he might have said that women should have the vote.
Oh God!
If he was trying to come onto a suffragist, that's probably what he would have said.
Quite the line.
The next person he married was a woman named Martha Hersfeld here in Chicago, and she lived with her married sister Augusta Burmeister on Ontario Street. And I've puzzled out what the address would have been after the address has changed. It would have been just west of the Portillos.
Oh, God. So, all right.
Right in the Portillo's Rock and Roll McDonald's area that we still call the Rock and Roll McDonald's, even though it hasn't been the Rock and Roll McDonald's in years. Mm-hmm. That's also where the ghost tours would pick up. So I was in there all the time, but they turned it into a McDonald's mall. It's not. It's really more of a place for nightclub people to use the bathroom than anything else.
What was that area like at that time?
At the time, it was a lot grubbier. It was a lot more industrial. But just a couple of blocks away was the jail, too. Okay. So he would have been within a home run swing of the jail and the criminal court building. So if you were east of Clark Street, it was all right. They were a little bit west of Clark Street where it got a little bit rougher. There's actually, from about a decade or two later, just north of Chicago Avenue, you were into the Bohemian District. I just read this terrific description of that. A guy who lived just north of Chicago Avenue said, "North of me is Bughouse Square, where all of my friends end up. To the west is Little Hell, where I'll go when I die. To the east is the Gold Coast, which I can't afford. And below me is the Chicago River, which is convenient for those who care for drowning."
Oh, wow. I love that description.
Yeah, and
that's
something
fabulous.
And anytime I have $5, I can get a night of sin, liquor, and food. Sin, din for a fin. Sin, din, and gin for a fin.
Does the money language come from Chicago? The fin, the sawbuck?
I doubt it started here. Yeah, that's what I'd have to look up, but
For people who don't know what a fin is,
Yeah, Finn is a five. I think
yeah.
I associate it with Chicago, but it might not have started in Chicago.
Yeah, I do.
Sometimes you look these things up in the Oxford English Dictionary, and it goes way back.
Yeah.
And this is one thing where newspaper archives come in handy, is like trying to see when a certain phrase started coming into the vernacular. Like recently, I saw a gravestone that said 3 times a lady.
Oh, wow.
And I had to see, so I checked the dates. It just said 1978. That's the year the song came out. Found she died June 1st. The song came out June 18th.
Huh.
I'm not saying she was a psychic. They didn't build the tombstone the day she died, but
No.
Her children must have resonated with that song.
Too funny.
But I did have to wonder, is that like an older phrase before Lionel Richie put it in a song? And no, there's you can see, if you put it into the newspaper archives now, that it said 3 times a lady knocked on the door this evening. But
I will tell you,
it didn't really spike and use as a phrase until the song.
That's funny. Well, my dad was born in 1933, and so he passed away in 2001. He still was using Finn, Sawbuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of, because my son and I were talking about that. He was trying to ask me all the different, all the different, the C note.
Yeah.
Nobody says C note either anymore, I guess.
Don't they?
Do they? I don't know.
I don't know. I think it might have gone out with bling.
But yeah, my dad would say Finn, Sawbuck. You need some money, hey Pat. It just kind of resonates.
Which
with
one's
me.
a sawbuck?
I think it's 20, because if you have a half a sawbuck, that would be a 10.
Okay.
Right? I don't think he ever said you need 2 fins.
Yeah.
Right? I haven't looked it up, but now we all have to.
Yeah, we're all going to have to look this up now. And if you're on our Patreon, patreon.com/tombsnoopers, I'll look into this. We'll put some kind of a post up there on that. And this is one of the fun things about newspaper archives. I don't get all of the papers that I need from the newspaper, from like newspapers.com, or there's a couple others that have different Chicago papers that aren't on that one. But I still have to go to the microfilm room all the time. In particular, a lot of the most detailed reporting on Hoch came out of the Chicago Evening American, but that one hadn't started yet in 1896 when he married Minnie. They would have to rehash the story later on.
Sure.
But the marriage was listed in the newspapers at the time, and just a few months later he married Martha Herfeld, who was living with her married sister right by where the Portillo's is now. And after just a couple of months, he told both of them, "I'm going to take you both on a trip to Germany. So why don't you draw your money out of the bank? Your bank is about to fail." And this is what he said. I have information. Your bank is going to fail. You better get your money out of that bank account. And there was one account that went around saying that there was a check that was written to Augusta, whose new sister-in-law, Augusta Burmeister, and he managed to rub off the second A, so it just said August Burmeister. Then he got somebody to vouch for him that he was August Burmeister. But you did have to do these tricks. There are references to like people saying, I heard over in this other state that a woman's property automatically becomes the man's. And it was always like a rumor of something that happened in another state. It comes up specifically in the Holmes case, in the Hoch case sometimes. And in the 1830s, that would have been the case. But over the course of the 19th century, most states had been changing marital property laws. And this is the kind of thing I had to dig into quite a bit with this story. And
you have a couple, 2, 3.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite
marriages.
things in the entire thing is he likely murdered a woman in Ohio at one point. And they brought in one of the neighbors at the coroner's inquest, like years later in 1905, when the whole story had become a major sensation. And they were interviewing the guy during the inquest, and he said, I also heard that he married, right afterwards, he married a woman in Pennsylvania, and they put him in jail, but then decided that the law here in Pennsylvania is that a woman's property becomes her husband, so he couldn't steal it. And they said, well, so that's the law in Pennsylvania, huh? And he said, that's what I read. And then they said, so what's the law in Ohio? And he said that it closes at 12 o'clock.
Oh my God.
So people were being flippant about this stuff even back then.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I did have to check, no, that was not the law in Pennsylvania at the time. But there is a wedding that there is a marriage record that was almost certainly him. So the basics of the story line up. And who knows what some sheriff or some justice of the peace might have said. Like, oh, well, he was married, so there couldn't be thefts. Even if that was technically not the letter of the law, who knew how carefully they were following this stuff.
Right.
So, but that's a whole other one. I will tell that story again when we get to the Cincinnati stories, because I'm always amused by the humor in this. Now and then I can catch, like, there's a dirty joke that Hoch told to a reporter at one point that the guy didn't realize he was being told a dirty joke, so ended up in the papers.
Oh boy.
And we'll get to that one.
Sure.
So
I love your excitement.
Yeah, I'm just so excited about this. So he left Martha at home and said he was going with her sister to the bank to withdraw all of the money. He probably had a note from her or something. Then on the way back, with all of the money in hand, he told the sister, "You hurry along on home. I've got to stop into this bookstore to get something to read on the ship." And that was the last they saw of him. And this was it was a trick he pulled quite a bit.
They got off easy.
Yeah, he didn't kill them.
Right.
He didn't kill them or anything. He just took all of their savings and destroyed their relationship. Because Augusta blamed her sister for everything. And Martha was said to have gone gray overnight because she was so stressed out by the whole thing. This was a trick that Hoch would do quite a bit, saying he was going to buy the tickets to take them to Germany. And also, he would say, "I need to borrow money from you because I have to go to Germany." In this case, I think it was just like we're going on vacation. Later he would say, "I've just gotten the letter. My elderly father in Germany has died. I only have to go there to pick up all of the money." And that worked over and over. He tried it over and over. It didn't work every time.
And yet he would stay in Chicago and risk running into them?
Some of them he was living just a couple of blocks away from where they had been before.
So is this where the "I'll see you later, not if I see you first" comes from?
It's like, that's where we get the phrase. It's a classic bad tour guide trick to tell some story and say, "Well, that's where we get the phrase." It's almost never true.
I know.
But it comes up just
I've always
so
wondered about
many
that
times.
one. Why you'd be ducking behind a doorway or something.
So, well, Martha, we'll close out the story with her. At least there is a happy ending here. She was interviewed a couple of times. She moved to Pasadena after this.
Really?
Yeah.
Good for her to get some sunshine.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in these stories end up moving to Los Angeles. It's, Chicago winters will do that to you, I suppose.
Long ride.
So she moved out to Pasadena. She was interviewed a couple of times. I think that when Hoch was briefly jailed, initially a couple of years later, she went and saw him in jail. And said that she just didn't have the money to go after him herself at the time. But just a couple of years later, she ended up becoming a housekeeper for an old man. He was like 40 years older than her, 30 or 40 years older. And shortly after the Hoch sensation, she got re-interviewed again for that. She would give an interview from this guy's house where she was working, and then she married him. And he had a lot of money. And as stands to reason, just a few years later, he passed away, leaving her with an absolute fortune, probably more than Hoch ever made by marrying lots and lots of people. And all without having to kill anybody.
Right. And then never becoming close to her sister again, though.
Right. I don't know if they ever patched things up or not.
Right.
There are cases in here where I know the sisters who were both involved on opposite sides of the case must have apparently patched things up because they were posing in pictures together years later.
Okay.
But I don't really know whatever happened there. I couldn't find too much more about Augusta Burmeister, and partly because the names changed so much in these things. So Martha, I was able to trace. She died in California in 1945. Lived to a ripe old age. Still has her second husband's name on the gravestone out there.
Good for her.
Yeah. So after that, instead of going back from the bookstore, Hoch, it turned out, went to San Francisco.
Oh.
And again, came up with whole new personas. When he was with Martha, neighbors remembered him as a very pious, very religious man who was always like breaking into psalms. And later on, when he married Marie Walker, the last woman he killed in Chicago, Marie had some issues with the church. She was really skeptical about the whole religion thing. So he would make anti-religion speeches around her and said he was actually a famous lecturer on this kind of a subject. Find out what they want, be that guy for a month.
Yeah.
So we've now covered his first 3 Chicago marriages. There was Julia Steinbrecher, who is now up at Graceland Cemetery, Martha Herefeld, who is buried in California, and Minnie Warnecki, or of any number of aliases, who was buried in a term grave at Montrose Cemetery. It was a very early burial at Montrose Cemetery. It's right across from Bohemian National.
Ah, okay.
And so, yeah, they couldn't tell me exactly where she was there. But she's in there someplace. She died in the neighborhood that would later become known, that I guess at the time was known as Little Hell. She was living in like a one-room place, but surrounded by luxurious furs. Very expensive clothes.
That's so weird.
So I wish I could find out more about her. I've got a lot of data that we'll be able to put up on the Patreon and everything, but I know there's more. I know there's more to her story that's probably just buried someplace.
Sure.
But, well, in any case, I'm Adam.
I'm Patty.
And we are Tomb Snoopers. We will see you next week. We'll talk about Hoch's adventures in San Francisco as we make our way through these stories. Check us out at patreon.com/tombsnoopers. You can follow follow me and my other stuff on Facebook.com/MysteriousChicago or Mysterious Chicago Tours here in Chicago. This time of season, I'll be doing an awful lot of cemetery tours this year. So come check it out. Check out the new book, Chicago's Serial Husband, The Marriages and Murders of Johann Hoch.
Excellent.
Tomb Snoopers is brought to you by Patreon.com/TombSnoopers, where you can get tons of supplemental material, including some of the marriage records that may or may not be Hoch and Minnie Warnecki, a whole bunch about the Ernestine Domke murder trial that I really didn't have room for in the book, plus early access to episodes, all kinds of bonus material. Check it out at Patreon.com/TombSnoopers.